Greetings from EGS India. Thank you for taking your time off to come for this presentation on design for quality as a part of our technology series. The design for quality, the next step, as a part of our technology series in digital transformation. We hope this presentation is helpful for your requirements and you would be in a position to use the information that you have gained from this presentation as a part of your day-to-day activities in design and development of products and technologies at your office. Quality and reliability are two eyes of a product. In other words, quality and reliability determine the fate of a product. 85% of the product cost is determined by design. In other words, the product's cost, reliability, and quality are determined by design. In order for us to have a deterministic approach in assessing the quality, assessing the reliability, it is important for us to look at design from a different perspective, and that perspective is called as design for quality. We will go through this presentation with the following agenda. As you can see in this slide, I hope you are able to see the slides. The agenda is, first we will start with an introduction to EGS India, and then we will look at the current challenges that customers are facing, the design for quality process, the DFQ driven design essentials, and benefits of the proposed process, and summarize it with what we have understood from today's presentation. Introduction to EGS India is first. For people who do not know us, EGS India's vision is engineering development through effective partnership. The vision is tried to accomplish through mission statements, namely imparting leading edge technology in training and development, problem solving and new product development through consulting services, and providing software solutions and technology support to our customers India-wide. We have 4 offices with the headquarters in Kodambakkam, Chennai, and the rest of the Tamil Nadu headquarters working out of Coimbatore, with an office in Trichy and a technical training division called Academics in Chennai at Kodambakkam. Our business model comprises of, first, with the engineering services, where we do product design and development, new product design and development, design validations using finite elements, computational fluid dynamics, so on and so forth. Dimensional management, where the DFQ forms the heart of the system, and then value engineering for reducing the cost, reducing the time, and improving the quality of the products. We are representatives of Dassault Systems SolidWorks Corporation and Varatech Incorporate USA, who are primarily dimensional management consultants worldwide, developing a software called Sigmund, and we also promote data security toolkits as applied to engineering processes. Our technology training division, Academics, provides computer-aided engineering training programs, GD&T and tolerance stacks training programs, failure modes and effects analysis, design for manufacture and assembly courses, and popular CAD and FEA toolkit training as applied to industrial applications. Now, let us get on to the main theme of the agenda, which is design for quality. Why is it required? The current challenges faced by the industry are: cost of poor quality is undermining profitability, product reliability issues are keeping on surfacing every now and then, high cost of precision because of the tolerances provided on the drawing, absence of cause-effect correlation when there are issues. It is typically solved based on the experience or the gut feel of the person who is attending to the issue, and consistency in quality is not being achieved. Same drawing, same manufacturing processes, same machineries are being used, same people are doing the manufacturing, yet the product build quality varies quite a bit, so that consistency suffers, resulting in lack of quality and not so good reliability. These are the current challenges. When we look at any product, development of any product, the choice of tolerances is provided by the design department. And as you can see, the design process currently being used is shown in this slide, wherein the end user is beset with development of drawings based on 2D and 3D data sets. Allocation of tolerances is done based on standards, past experience, fear of quality issues in terms of tightening the tolerances, while the management is unable to verify whether the design meets the quality requirements. There is no scientific process to estimate the line yield if they are going to put a new line, or if they are going to use an existing supplier based on the process quality already available. There's no visibility of process to address the non-compliance issues, and the management is reactive to issues resulting on account of lack of containment action plan. These are typical problems that any company faces, and whenever there are product quality and reliability issues, the design department is brought to the fore to try and help them to solve the problems. So in other words, necessarily the issues relating to drawings are the one which take the centerpiece when it comes to any quality or reliability issue. So the variation in the product as it is manufactured is the cause for concern. So the variation risk management is the primarily important part of the DFQ process. You can see this 4-quarter graph wherein you will see the performance versus the tolerances being on the first quadrant, the performance versus the revenue being on the second quadrant. Third quadrant is nothing but cost, so it is linear. Cost on the axis and the axis, the ordinate and the abscissa on the negative ends. And then you will see the clearances versus the manufacturing cost in the fourth quadrant. As you can see in the robust design process, as the tolerances keeps on getting diluted, the performance of the product suffers. So if you look at the red line, you will see from performance, as you come down, as you tighten the tolerance, the manufacturing cost goes up. Because the manufacturing cost goes up, the overall product cost goes up, as you can see on the third quadrant. As you move up to the second quadrant from the first quadrant, you will see for the performance part, for the performance point, the revenue that is coming because of the marketing strategies coming into picture can be seen. So the difference between the revenue and the cost is actually decided by the robust design practices, which slate from the performance arising out of tolerances that are provided in the drawings, the clearances that are achieved in manufacturing, and the manufacturing cost processes and cost itself. So if we were to adopt a robust design practice, and if we were to use different threshold points on the graph, you will see that the gap between the revenue and the cost widening, leading to a positive cash flow. In other words, the choice of the tolerances and the clearances and the better manufacturing practices are the ones which influence the differential between the cost and the revenue. When we say cost, the manufacturing cost is one part of it. The opportunity cost is another. The cost of precision is one thing. The cost of poor quality is another. So as you can see, the difference between the cost and the revenue is arising only as a result of our intelligent choice of tolerances, intelligent choices of the process capability, and how to adopt a robust design which, in addition to better marketing practices and superior manufacturing practices, would help us to deliver upon profitability that every company is seeking. So as you can see, in the next slide, you will see the design for quality and reliability process being put there. So the design for quality and reliability starts with the DFQ and R objective on the left side. These are measurable objectives. For example, if you look at the machine tool holder, you will see the vibration being a measurable objective. The vibration of the assembly arising out of the center of mass moving away from the axis, instantaneous axis of rotation, leading to vibrations. In other words, vibration is the performance objective, while the assembly objective is reducing the stack up of tolerances as the components keep on getting assembled. When the components are being assembled, the design for assembly comes into focus. From the design for assembly, the datum reference frames come into picture, the choice of the datums. As you can see, the assembly and the performance objectives are enumerated in the design failure modes and effects analysis. The DFMEA document provides the single source of a repository where the DFQ and R objectives reside, and the risk priority number that comes out of it prioritizes the essentiality, the what do you call it, is the criticality and the desirability of the quality characteristics. Now, if you look at the design for manufacture, the process capability CPCPK along with the risk priority number of DFMEA comes into your tolerance optimization, because initially you have given the tolerance and now you want to do a tolerance analysis so that your design for quality and reliability goals can be met. And the tolerance optimization gets performed, and the key characteristics based on the risk priority number, the key characteristics or the critical to quality characteristics come on the drawing, and the product design specification drawing is enumerated. We can see that the design for cost drives the tolerance optimization through the proper choice of cost of precision COP and the cost of poor quality COPQ. As you can see on the southern side, you can see the performance objectives leading to the design for life, which replaces factor of safety in terms of product reliability, and the design for performance comes into picture in addition to design for transportation, design for service, and any other design for X. Now we can see that the design for quality and reliability process is complete if we are able to follow this process through and through, right from the time when the idea for a new product comes into picture till the drawing release happens, and subsequently monitoring it as the production processes take over. Now, the next slide tells you, concentrates on the design for assembly as can be seen in this gearbox. Herein, the design for assembly is need to be known a priori, that is in advance before the drawing is released. Why? Because 95% of the problems that arise in quality issues surface as a result of assembly. If the assembly process is not in alignment with the DFQ objectives, DFQ and R objectives, then we have an issue. So the datum reference frame or the datums that come on the drawing in GD&T are driven primarily by assembly. So design for assembly takes the center stage. Now when we are putting the drawings together, the design for assembly dictates the datums, the choice of tolerances, and the way the GD&T schema or the drawing schema is laid out. As can be seen, you can see the tolerances being enumerated on the drawing are typically the tolerances that a designer would give depending on what he deems fit in terms of quality objectives that he lays out for protecting as a result of the drawing that he is releasing. So at every stage of the day, every stage of the way, we are releasing drawings based on datums and the dimensional schema arising out of the design for assembly process dictated by the design for quality process, where measurable objectives are brought into picture. When I say quality for design for quality objectives, for example, gap between two parts, clearances, flushness between parts, misalignment, these are simple common objectives that you can enumerate and you can put on the drawings to protect based on your GD&T schema when we are taking the DFQ process and implementing it as a part of our design processes. As you can see in the next slide, you will see a popular 3D CAD process For example, you are looking at a switch. On the switch, you can see the complete assembly of the switch. Here, you will see the assembly process on the left side is enumerated in your history tree. The way the components are getting assembled is enumerated, and at the bottom you are seeing the design for quality objectives, namely in terms of clearances, gaps, floats, interferences, so on and so forth. So on the left side top you are seeing the 3D model tree. On the left side bottom you are seeing the design for quality objectives, leveraging upon the popular 3D CAD that typically people use to enumerate drawings and to convey specifications to suppliers as well as to customers. Now, taking the 3D model, before arriving at tolerances, when we are putting the tolerances together, are the tolerances adequate? If they are adequate, have I given enough tolerances for manufacturing so that while protecting the design for quality objectives, we can maximize the tolerance to bring in more components so that the per piece cost can be reduced. This is where checking the design for quality objective inside CAD becomes important. So once you establish the measurable objectives, you can put it on the 3D CAD and you can do what is called as the variation simulation that we talked about earlier in the presentation in terms of variation risk management. This is exactly where the DFQ process gets driven by quality and reliability issues. If we do not do this as a part of the process of design and development, we end up doing it after the components have been tooled up, and correcting the tools or changing it downstream in the assembly line is such a big nightmare with the production stop process that the cost of poor quality eclipses the cost of precision. Now, once the 3D model is established, the 3D model and the design sequence helps us to come up with the effective variation of tolerances as a part of the variation risk management using the tolerance tree, as can be seen over here. This tree becomes larger and larger with more and more sub-assembly tolerances at the part levels influencing the assembly objective, and very complicated DFQ objectives need to be solved simply using intelligent processes upfront in engineering. Needless to say, this is a concurrent engineering practice that every company which is mindful of quality and reliability issues and objectives to put it upfront in the beginning of their design and development process so that they don't need to revisit the drawing after grief comes either from manufacturing lines or from suppliers or from customers. Remember, a product quality defect identified at design time costs you, let us say, 10 rupees. The same thing when you have tooled up could cost you 100 rupees. And the same problem, if reported by the customer, could cost you more than 1000 rupees in terms of 10x of the previous, and in terms of, not to speak of, the loss of trust that the customer has as a result of the quality and the reliability issue. So doing it upfront, you are extending the design cycle time. However, the overall product design and development cycle time reduces. In some cases, people have seen the extent to which the job one goes onto the customer place. The time has been reduced by almost 40%, primarily because of the establishment of the DFQ process while protecting the profitability of the organization. Now, once you have put this in place and you have done the simulation of the tolerances, you are able to get the assembly yield in terms of what are the control limits and what are the specification limits and how much yield is going to come out of the manufacturing line. The more the red it is, the less the profitable the organization in terms of poor manufacturing yields. So this can be controlled upfront at the design stage, because engineering processes, when driven intelligently using these kinds of approaches, helps us to identify sensitive dimensions and their tolerances, as can be seen in the next chart, which help us to identify which are the contributors which have typically a higher sensitivity towards the quality issue as compared to the other ones. As you can see in this slide, over 63% of the problem could come from one particular dimension on the drawing. In this particular case, it happens to be a float. So in other words, the clearance between two parts or the fit that has been given between two parts influences the gap, as can be seen in this particular example with over 63% contribution. So in other words, if we are able to regulate this clearance and keep it within 3 to 6 sigma levels as is required by the process of yield, as is set by the yield, we can achieve consistent quality. This is the essence of engineering design, with quality being taken upfront at the design stage and taken as measurable objectives, and giving manufacturing and quality people the ability to look at have the insight into what is going on into the assembly, so that they can do the needful to restore the process back into equilibrium once the process strays out of our limits specified for our quality objectives. Now, once you have done the optimization of drawings, once you have done the optimization of tolerances, now let us remember, we can do it for one set of tolerances or we can do it for multiple objectives, and you would be able to maximize the tolerance so that for the process capability, you are able to arrive at optimal tolerances depending on the choice of method. It could be a serialized production process, in which case Monte Carlo simulation can be used to simulate the number of components coming out of the assembly line. Or you can use the worst case approach if fewer number of components are coming into assembly and fewer products are coming into the marketplace. Or you can use the square root of sum of squares method, or the process-centric approach, or the modified process where the deviated processes can be studied. In the event of a deviation in a process, how much the yield would vary. All these things can be done from a digital model even without one prototype being built. In other words, design for quality is upfront so that people can come back and say, these are the indicators which are influencing the quality and reliability of the product and we need to take care of. These global dashboards and charts helps companies to make informed decisions with regard to investment in new processes, investment in suppliers, investment in new toolings, so on and so forth, so that the profitability can be protected and maintained. What you can see is, in the next slide, you will be able to see in this dashboard the production process. If you were to simulate it, how many would deviate in a typical process given based on the process capability that you gave, or based on a 6 sigma or a 3 sigma process that you chose, and you can come up with which are the sensitive tolerances, how those sensitive tolerances interact, what kind of yield are coming from the line, what kind of distribution is going to take place, and what typically will be the ppm levels. Now this helps us to achieve product quality and reliability goals even before the drawing has been signed off. So in design review meetings, the productive gains that the team gets, the design review team gets, the design review team being design, manufacturing and inspection coming together, the tangible benefits they get as a result of definitive tolerances being given on the drawing helps them to achieve consistent quality that they would not be able to do otherwise, because the visibility is not there. So in essence, the sensitivity gives you the heads up information, as can be seen in the next slide, with regard to how those sensitivity are varying and how deviation from nominal would get affected, what is the percentage contribution, and for each and every one of the DFQ process, we are able to enumerate and get the specification limits, and so that the manufacturing can set the control limit to get the maximum yield from the line. This way, the designer need not tighten tolerances for fear of quality issues, because that is what he is doing anyway when a quality issue is reported. And the heads up display gives exactly which parameters are sensitive and which are not. This kind of approach helps us to eliminate drawing errors which result as a result of improper drawing schema, inadequate tolerancing, that comes in because the drawing schema is not complete. In other words, if one adopts this process, the correctness and the completeness of the drawing becomes easier. The correctness and the completeness of the tolerance specification is achieved. Clear identification of the critical to quality characteristics are brought in. Remember, the design failure modes and effects analysis provides the risk priority number that becomes the judge as to which dimensions and their tolerances are supposed to be on the CTQ on the drawing. Intelligent manufacturing line yield prediction is possible as a result of this. Incorporation of what if process capability of different suppliers. You have 3 different suppliers for the same assembly or part. What would be the quality issues that you would get as a result of that? All those things can be predicted at the design stage itself. Incorporation of the current process capability of suppliers or our own internal process capability can be mapped. Decision making on the cost of precision versus the cost of poor quality comes a no-brainer in this kind of an approach. Objective decision making, both technical in terms of tolerances given and also in terms of if the tolerances are going to get stacked up, how can I change my assembly practices so that the design for quality objectives can be met? By changing the design for assembly, the assembly process itself, it can be achieved without any change in costs. All these things can be technical decisions which can be made objectively at the design stage itself, while manufacturing lines, incorporating manufacturing lines, putting up new lines, establishing suppliers, working with the supplier costs becomes a business goals. Now both of these objectives are met as a result of the DFQ process. As can be seen in the next slide, the first time right becomes a reality. Elimination of rework. Let us remember that the profitability of a company lies in its scrapyard. So once the rework is eliminated, the scrap is minimized, if not completely eliminated, the profitability increases that much more. The cost drivers are known upfront. The target cost-driven development process for products, as I said earlier in this presentation, 85% of the product cost is determined by design, some of them from material, some of them from material specification, material utilization, and most of it is from the specification of the tolerances that we given in the parts. Let us remember that for reliability to be achieved, fewer number of components going into the assembly is a prerequisite. In other words, the assembly issues that arise as a result of the tolerances can be minimized even by reducing the number of components going into the assembly. This way, the consistency in quality and reliability are achieved. So, the benefits of the design digital transformation approach in terms of the DFQ process results in robust and reliable designs. The deflections coming out of the finite element analysis can also be put as a part of your DFQ process in terms of measurable objectives to include in your tolerance stack up calculations as well, which means reliable designs also come into picture through integrating CAE with this approach. This approach is called as the dimensional management approach, and it helps us to reduce the process variation, enhances the confidence in supplier capabilities, helps us to have better controlled process changes, gets it first time right as I told you earlier, reduces the cost of non-conformance by looking at the cause and effect diagram and seeing where the non-conformance are coming into picture and putting monitored processes, having instant feedback to all stakeholders across the spectrum of product design and development through product launch. And we need to understand that this is dynamic as long as the product is in service. In other words, we revisit tolerances depending on the cost, because cost being the driver. Initially, we may have stringent tolerances when we are able to capitalize on the market. When predatory pricing comes from other copycats or other people who have similar products, then innovation comes into picture, in which case with innovation and with tolerance, best tolerance practices, we are able to have a higher order win ratio. So the least cost products can be brought about as a result of this. So this process, as we have enumerated in the beginning, helps us to achieve the design for quality and reliability objectives stated forth in this presentation. Now, I hope you enjoyed this presentation with regard to the DFQ process itself and how it can be incorporated in your day-to-day design and development activities. Now, I leave the floor open to any questions that you may have.